All right, the slave ship. Slave ships, called slavers, were usually small ships in a row with ship size measured in tonnage, theoretically determined how many slaves could carry, with this formula being slaves per 2 tons. A large ship of 300 tons was expected to carry at least 600 slaves, but this captains of this ignored this formula. Some kept humans in light cargo, calculating that smaller loads and lower morality made for revolt would be less likely. But most captors were tightly packed, who squeezed in human beings together. Hopefully, large pack members would offset the increase of death. For example, 12 tons of humans from British ships sailed from London onto a voyage in 1699 should have been fully loaded with 240 slaves, yet they carried 350 from West Africa, yet a ton from Barbados and Jamaica. Another ship signed on to carry another 450, usually carried about 600. Listen to this now. The slave ships, they carrying the tonnage of slaves that they was carrying was over the tonnage of the whole ship. So they was risking their life. It might be set up and equipped for 400 slaves, and they would put 600 on there. And then they would stop in the islands and get more slaves, because the islands was a holding pen. Because, see, the islands, the currents gonna hit them islands before it hit North and South America. You see what I'm saying? Because if you look at those wind currents and the currents in the ocean, it goes straight to the islands. And then it go to South America, then North America. You see what I'm saying? And that's what they was following. So you got people overpacked in ships or whatnot. Overpacked in ships or whatnot. And, people is dying on the ship. And they would throw them overboard or whatnot. Sharks would follow the ships or whatnot. So, let's get into this. The cargo space of the slave ships was generally only about 5 feet high in the ships. Captors and carpenters have vertical space by building shelves so that the slaves might be packed above and below the planks, measured about 5.5 feet and 1.3 feet wide. Consequently, the slave had only 20 to 25 inches of headroom to add to his comfort. The crews chained male slaves together to pair them to prevent rebellion, lawed then them away from the woman and child. Then most frequently reproduced illustrations of slavers in captivity for human cargo comes from the books which sailed from the Liverpool, England during 1780 at 300 tons. The largest ships at times at diagrams would show tightly packed slaves were boarded. It although also would abolish the transatlantic slave trade. So they saying because of these unhealthy practices and these unsafe practices, even for them, overloading the ship or whatnot, that's why some of the reasons why they abolished it. So even when they said they abolished it because it was unsafe for them too, because they overload the ships or whatnot. So most point of study in these diagrams of the transatlantic slave trade designed securely the physical suffering caused. The reminders do not show the consistent shifting and crushing among the chafing among the human cargo, because movements of the ship during the storms and the crew will often neglect to feed the slaves and empty tubs, excrement, and slaves on deck. Excused by the ton of sick people, they remove the dead, mortally wounded, and high because the crowded sanctuaries conditions seaboard these ships between 1715 and 1755. The slaves of death in the French ships averaged 15%. The highest recorded mortality rate was 34%. Damn. So if they had a ship of 600 people, only about 400 would make it. Damn. 34%. Good gracious of life. That was the highest. And 15%, maybe about 150 would, 100, 150 would pass. And the other 500 would make it or whatnot. So over these times, years and years and years, in the 19th century, these numbers declined to 5% overall, to the third of the Africans subjected to trade and perish between the capture and the embarkment onto the slave ships. Another died during the middle pass. Most of them died. A lot died during the middle passage and the seasoning on the Caribbean islands. I told you those seasoning plantations. See, seasoning plantations. See, them shits was holding areas for the slaves or whatnot. So even if you was a sailor or a slave or whatnot, and you had a slave ship, you ain't even have to go straight to Africa. You could just go down to the islands. You see what I'm saying? But it would be higher to buy them that way. The cheaper way to get them would be to sail all the way over there. And then you can get yours. It's like getting them for wholesale if you go over there. But if you go down to the islands, you're going to have to pay an extra tax. This is what they're saying. But on these seasoning plantations, they was training them to bring them into American society over here in North, South, and Central America. But they use them as like them islands as a holding pen. And that's where they are saying, them the same people that call Willie Lynch. But they were saying that, most roughest tribes that would rebel as we revolt, as we just read, to those islands, to those seasoning plantations, to break them and, break them books down or whatnot, beat them or whatnot, so they could, be trained, as they, I don't even like saying civilized because we was already civilized. We had our own languages. We had already had everything. You see what I'm saying? So they be talking about civilized. You ain't civilized nothing. You ain't civilized nothing. If anything, you dumbed our people down. Look at us today. We ain't like who we was when we came here. Whether it was in the islands or whatever. Because just because you get dropped off in the islands, that don't mean you West Indian. You understand what I'm saying? Just because you get dropped off in South America, that don't mean you know South American. Just because you get dropped off in North America, that don't mean you know North American. What am I saying? In the transatlantic slave trade, like we was talking earlier, when they was bringing them from West Africa, you think they was over there asking people, oh, you from East Africa? Nah, they was taking, that's why I say African Americans, when you check their DNA, they gonna be from all over Africa. You see what I'm saying? All different parts of Africa. Because you're not asking, you just collecting and bringing them. And they would rather, because if you bring one lot that's from one area, they could communicate with one another. Just like we just say, just read. They communicate with one another. So how would you dumb down the chance of them revolt? It would be break up the lots. So you get people from all different areas to speak all different languages. You see what I'm saying? They'll speak all different languages or whatnot. So it would be less chance they would be able to talk to each other. Because you remember, you got a 3-week ride riding over here. They ain't know where they was going, so it might took them a month. So you on a ship 30 days with people that you can't even speak languages with. Because the first few lots they went and got, they rebelled. They rebelled. You see, because they could talk to each other or whatnot. Even if they can't talk, they can use the drum to speak to one another. So the Europeans got smart and started breaking up the lots down there in the Caribbean, man. So they had Africans from all different areas from down there in the Caribbean, and they would take them from the Caribbean and bring them to North America. So I just wanted to go into those slave ships right quick. And if you look it up, just Google it. African Americans diving for slave ships. Just look it up. Just look it up. Because it was always in European tradition after slavery was supposed to be abolished, even though we just read they were still bringing slaves, Africans here from Africa, even after slavery was abolished. So they was tradition was for them to sink the slave ship. You see what I'm saying? For them to sink it. After they was done or whatnot, they would get rid of the evidence. So our brothers and sisters right now out there spending their own money, bringing them up out the sea. Jump out.